In the middle of the 19th century, a doctor walked into a maternity clinic in Vienna and noticed something terrifying. Women were dying. Not occasionally, not from rare complications. In some wards, enormous numbers of new mothers developed a violent fever shortly after giving birth. Their condition could deteriorate rapidly, and doctors had no reliable explanation for why. They blamed the air. They blamed overcrowding. They blamed the weather. Some even blamed the women themselves. But one physician, Ignaz Semmelweis, noticed something strange. Doctors and medical students often came directly from examining dead bodies to treating living patients. They did not wash their hands properly between the two. Semmelweis ordered them to clean their hands with a chlorinated solution. Deaths fell dramatically. The doctors did not yet understand bacteria. They did not know exactly what they were removing from their hands. But they had stumbled onto one of the most powerful ideas in human history. Cleaning could prevent death. And at the center of that story was a substance humanity had been experimenting with for thousands of years. Soap. Today, soap is so ordinary that we barely notice it. You rub it between your hands, add water, rinse, and watch the dirt disappear. But that simple action represents thousands of years of chemistry, trade, religion, medicine, industry, and disease. Because for most of human history, people had no idea what germs were. They could see dirt. They could smell decay. But the microscopic organisms capable of spreading disease were completely invisible. And somehow, long before humans understood those organisms, they learned to manufacture substances that could help remove them. The story begins more than 4,000 years ago, in ancient Mesopotamia. Some of the earliest written evidence for soap-like substances comes from Babylonian civilization. People discovered that when fats were combined with alkaline materials, such as ash, something unusual happened. The greasy mixture changed. Instead of behaving like ordinary fat, it could help lift oils and grime from surfaces. This was primitive chemistry. No laboratories, no molecular diagrams, just observation, experimentation, and repetition. But early soap was probably not sitting beside a sink waiting for someone to wash their hands. It had other jobs. Soap-like mixtures were useful for cleaning textiles, processing wool, and possibly treating certain skin conditions. For ancient societies built around cloth, livestock, agriculture, and trade, cleaning fabric mattered. And the basic chemical principle behind soap was already there. Fat, alkali, water, heat. Over time, different civilizations developed their own cleaning mixtures. Ancient Egyptians used combinations of oils and alkaline salts. Medical texts describe washing substances used for cleaning and treating the body. But cleanliness in the ancient world did not necessarily mean what cleanliness means today. There was no germ theory. People washed because dirt was unpleasant, because smells mattered, because bathing could be social, religious, medicinal, or luxurious, not because anyone understood microorganisms. The Greeks developed elaborate bathing traditions, but they did not always depend on soap. Athletes could coat their bodies with oil and then scrape away sweat and dirt using a curved metal instrument called a strigil. The Romans expanded bathing into something enormous. Roman cities contained public bathhouses where hundreds of people could wash, exercise, socialize, conduct business, and relax. Water arrived through aqueducts. Bath complexes contained rooms at different temperatures. Pools could be warm, hot, or cold. To a visitor, Rome might have looked obsessed with cleanliness. But Roman bathing was not modern hygiene. Shared water, crowded spaces, primitive sanitation, and limited understanding of disease meant that bathing did not automatically make people medically safe. Still, cleaning products continued to develop. According to later Roman accounts, soap-like substances were associated with peoples in northern Europe, where animal fats and ash could be combined into cleaning or cosmetic preparations. Then the Roman world fractured. Aqueducts failed in some places. Public bath complexes declined. Urban populations changed. and bathing habits changed with them. This is where the history of cleanliness becomes complicated. The popular image of medieval Europeans as people who never washed is exaggerated. People did wash. Bathhouses existed. Hands and faces were cleaned. Religious institutions sometimes emphasized washing, and wealthy households could maintain bathing routines. But access varied enormously. Large Roman-style public water systems were no longer universal. Heating large amounts of water required fuel. Cities were crowded. Waste disposal was primitive. Clean water could be difficult to obtain, and soap was not always cheap. In parts of the Mediterranean, however, soap making became a sophisticated craft. Cities such as Aleppo became famous for hard soaps produced from olive oil and alkaline substances, sometimes incorporating laurel oil. Across the Islamic world, soap making benefited from advanced chemical knowledge and strong trading networks. Hard soaps could be manufactured, transported, and sold. In Europe, soap-making centers also developed. Mediterranean regions with access to olive oil became particularly important. Castile became associated with pale olive oil soap. Marseille developed a major soap industry. Soap was becoming a commodity, but it was not yet an inexpensive object found beside every household basin. Governments taxed it. Production required raw materials. Quality varied. And for many people, soap remained valuable enough to use carefully. Meanwhile, European cities were growing. More people meant more waste, more crowded housing, more contaminated water, and more opportunities for disease to spread. But the central mystery remained unsolved. People could wash. They could clean clothing. They could remove visible dirt. Yet they still did not understand the invisible world living on their hands, in their water, and on the objects around them. Then, in the 18th and 19th centuries, everything began to change. Chemistry became more precise. Manufacturing expanded. Scientists learned more about fats, alkalis, and chemical reactions. Soap could increasingly be produced at industrial scale. One major obstacle was the alkali itself. Traditional soap making often depended on ash-derived alkaline substances. Industrial chemistry created new ways to manufacture alkali in enormous quantities. That changed the economics of soap. Factories could produce more. Prices could fall. Distribution could expand. Then came another transformation: advertising. Soap manufacturers no longer sold only a cleaning substance. They sold an idea: cleanliness, respectability, modernity. A clean body became increasingly connected with social status and proper behavior. Soap moved from specialized workshops toward mass consumer culture. But something far more important was happening in medicine. Hospitals in the 19th century could be dangerous places. Doctors moved between patients. Surgical instruments were reused. Hands were not always cleaned effectively. Blood and biological material could remain on clothing and equipment. Infection was common, and physicians still did not understand why. Many believed disease was caused by miasma, poisonous or corrupted air. Bad smells seemed connected to sickness, and sometimes they were, but not for the reason people thought. Then came Semmelweis. In the 1840s at Vienna General Hospital, he compared maternity wards and searched desperately for an explanation for maternal deaths. One clue was impossible to ignore. Doctors and students performed autopsies. Then they examined women in labor. Whatever was killing the mothers seemed to be traveling with them. Semmelweis could not see bacteria, but he suspected that some kind of material from corpses was being carried on doctors' hands. He introduced hand cleaning using chlorinated lime. Mortality fell dramatically. This should have changed medicine immediately. It didn't. Many physicians rejected his conclusions. His explanation conflicted with established beliefs, and asking doctors to accept that their own hands were killing patients was not an easy message. But the evidence was accumulating. Then scientists began revealing the invisible world. Louis Pasteur's experiments helped establish that microorganisms were involved in fermentation, decay, and disease processes. Joseph Lister applied emerging germ theory to surgery. He introduced antiseptic methods intended to prevent microorganisms from contaminating wounds. Medicine was beginning to understand something humanity had missed for thousands of years. Disease could travel through contamination. Hands mattered. Surfaces mattered. Water mattered. Cleaning mattered. And soap suddenly had a much larger significance. The chemistry is surprisingly elegant. Water alone struggles with oily substances. Oil and water resist mixing. Soap helps bridge that divide. Soap molecules have one part attracted to water and another attracted to oils and fats. When you scrub with soap and water, those molecules can surround greasy material and help lift it away from the skin. Then water carries it down the drain. That matters because microbes and contaminated material can be physically removed along with oils and dirt. The important part is not that soap creates some magical sterile surface. It doesn't. The power comes from chemistry combined with friction, water, and time. Rub, lift, rinse, remove. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, soap manufacturing was becoming enormous. Industrial factories could transform fats and oils into standardized products on a scale ancient soap makers could never have imagined. Companies competed over scent, texture, packaging, and purity. Bars became cheaper and more widely available. Running water expanded through cities. Bathrooms moved indoors. Municipal water systems improved. Sewers carried waste away. And soap became part of an entirely new sanitation ecosystem. This distinction matters. Soap alone did not save modern cities. A bar of soap without clean water is limited. Clean water without safe sewage disposal is vulnerable. Hospitals without sanitation can still spread infection. The revolution came from systems working together. Soap, clean water, sewers, waste treatment, hand washing, medical hygiene, food safety, public health education. Together, they created barriers between human beings and the microorganisms capable of moving between us. And those barriers transformed everyday life. Think about something as ordinary as preparing dinner. You touch raw ingredients. You wash your hands. You continue cooking. Or imagine a nurse moving between patients, a parent changing a child, a restaurant worker preparing food, a surgeon entering an operating room. The same basic principle appears again and again. Interrupt transmission. For most of history, humans could not see the enemy. Today, we understand much more about how pathogens spread. Yet one of our most effective tools remains astonishingly simple: soap and water. The 20th century turned hand washing into a major public health practice. Hospitals developed stricter hygiene procedures. Governments promoted washing. Schools taught children to clean their hands. Food industries adopted sanitation standards. Soap became so common in wealthy industrialized societies that its historical importance almost disappeared from view. It became boring. And that is exactly what successful infrastructure often does. When something works every day, you stop noticing it. You notice sanitation when it fails. You notice clean water when it disappears. And you notice hand hygiene when disease begins spreading through a population. Across the world, access to soap and reliable hand washing facilities is still not universal. The chemistry may be ancient. The technology may be cheap. But the system around it still depends on infrastructure. Water must be available. Soap must be affordable. Facilities must be accessible. People must know when and how to wash. That makes the history of soap unfinished. Modern soap also comes with new questions. What ingredients should we use? How much packaging do we need? What happens to detergents after they enter wastewater? How can hygiene products reach communities with limited water? And when do we actually need powerful antimicrobial products rather than ordinary soap? The answers continue to evolve. But the central mechanism remains remarkably familiar: fat and alkali. a chemical reaction, a substance that can interact with both oil and water, an idea ancient people discovered without microscopes. Imagine explaining modern hand washing to a Babylonian soap maker. They would recognize some of the ingredients. They might recognize the process, but they could not have imagined the invisible organisms that modern science would eventually reveal. They could not have imagined hospitals with sterile operating rooms, or factories producing millions of bars, or billions of people washing their hands under running water every day. And yet their experiments belonged to the same story. No single person invented soap as we know it. It emerged gradually. Ancient craftspeople learned to combine fats and alkaline materials. Mediterranean soap makers refined recipes. Chemists made production more predictable. Industrialists made it cheaper. Engineers brought clean water into homes. Doctors connected hygiene with disease. Scientists revealed microorganisms. Public health workers turned washing into routine behavior. And ordinary people repeated that behavior billions of times. That is why calling soap merely an invention misses the point. It is part of a system designed, slowly and imperfectly, to separate us from contamination. And perhaps the strangest part is how little attention it receives. Tomorrow morning, you may walk into a bathroom, turn on a tap, pick up a bar of soap, or press a dispenser. You will probably do it without thinking. Your hands will become wet. You will rub them together. Soap molecules will interact with oils and material on your skin. Water will carry that material away. The entire process may take less than a minute. Then you will turn off the tap, dry your hands, and leave. Nothing dramatic will happen. No alarm, no visible enemy, no moment that feels historically important. But behind that ordinary action are Babylonian craftspeople, Mediterranean soap makers, industrial chemists, doctors arguing over invisible causes of disease, scientists discovering microorganisms, engineers building water systems, and generations of public health workers trying to make cleanliness ordinary. For thousands of years, humanity lived surrounded by threats it could not see. We blamed smells, weather, bad air, fate. Then, slowly, we learned that some of the most dangerous things around us were microscopic, and one of the defenses was already sitting in our hands: soap. A mixture once used to clean cloth became part of the machinery of modern public health. Not because it was glamorous, not because one genius invented it overnight, but because generation after generation learned how to make it better, cheaper, safer, and available to more people. The greatest inventions are not always machines. Sometimes they are the things so ordinary that civilization forgets how difficult life was without them. And every time you wash your hands, you are using one of them.